Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm breaking down 10 of the changes coming to Path of Exile 2 that I'm most looking forward to. Let me know in the comments below what changes you're dying to see. I also wanted to extend a thank you to everyone watching and for the recent support of the channel. You're all legends, and with that said, in no particular order, let's jump straight into number 10. Flasks have undergone a pretty significant redesign for Path of Exile 2. No longer will you be smashing your flask keys like a toddler playing the xylophone. For context, in Path of Exile 1, your flasks would do things like give you extra armor for a number of seconds, or give you more evasion. In Path of Exile 2, you'll no longer be getting a stock standard positive effect simply by slapping them every few seconds. Your flasks will now need to be used to treat a certain condition, and used at the right time rather than preemptively. For example, if you're ignited, you can use a flask to remove this negative status effect, which will also grant your character immunity to ignite for a short duration. But, and this is the key information, if you were to use your flask before being ignited, you will lose a flask charge and gain no benefit whatsoever. You do not gain the flask effect unless you're impacted by the effect it is there to counter. Now, you'll have the other flasks like Life and Mana, which are obvious in design, and I'm sure we'll see other interesting flasks with unique abilities. But when it comes to your basic flasks, you'll need to only activate them when you need them, otherwise they'll be wasted. We're also going to be getting less flask charges, as normal mobs won't be giving them anymore. Instead, these will come from your magic and rare mobs. This is going to be a significant shift in mindset for many veteran PoE players, who, like me, are used to flasks being a means of keeping your defenses boosted, and are only worry having been keeping the buffs going. I know I, for one, am going to have to work on breaking that habit day one. Our second change is one I've covered in other videos, but worth mentioning. Skills are no longer simply gems you'll find or buy in the world. They're now uncut gems that allow you to select any skill you want of that tier. And, most importantly, some skills are tied exclusively to single weapon types. We did have some of this in Path of Exile 1, with certain skills requiring a weapon type to function, but this was fairly unique and generally allowed the character to use a number of different weapons, like PoE 1's Bone Shatter, allowing you to use a mace, scepter, axe, or staff. In Path of Exile 2, every weapon type has unique skills associated with it. Want to use Bone Shatter? You must use a mace. Want to use the Killing Palm Monk skill? You must use a quarterstaff. This will mean your weapon selection is much more important, as your skills won't continue to work if you swap your axe out for a mace. I was on the fence about this change, but having seen the animations they've been able to create with them, and knowing that swapping between weapon sets to use different skills happens automatically, I am coming around. I think this will really make those gear and skill decisions feel so much more impactful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of wacky hybrid style builds may come from this. The third change I'm really looking forward to is a bit more of a quality of life change, and one I've seen mixed reactions on. In the original Path of Exile, you would socket skill gems into your gear. You would need to manage the color of the sockets on that gear, and the number of sockets to be able to use your skills, and often a lot of the time was spent using currency and RNG mechanics to make the gear fit what you needed. They've really streamlined this for Path of Exile 2, and skills are now completely separated from gear. When starting a new character, you will have 9 skill slots for your gems, and each will have 2 support sockets available right away. To get more sockets, you'll need to find Jeweler's Orbs of increasing rarity to be able to unlock more support slots. It's no longer RNG based, requiring you to spam orbs on items. It's deterministic, meaning to get 3 support sockets, you merely need to find the right currency and use it once. And for colored sockets, this is now tied to your attributes: strength, dexterity, and intelligence. Need more blue sockets? Get more intelligence. Need green? Go dexterity. As you gain more of a particular attribute, you will unlock the ability to socket more support gems of those colors. This is a great change in my view, as long as those rare Jeweler's Orbs are actually rare. In Path of Exile now, we need to farm up a certain number of fusings or Jeweler's Orbs to then know we're likely to get what we want when we start to spam. If I can trade that for farming to get a single orb that will achieve the same effect, I'm pretty keen for it. But I could see some players who like to gamble missing the days of throwing 50 fusings on a chest piece while praying for that 6 link. Our next system change is the ability to specialize your passive skill tree down 2 paths. 3 if you're a druid to help you shapeshift. This was shown off quite early, but it is a system I really think goes a long way toward achieving the insane build variety that is available in Grinding Gear Games projects. In Path of Exile 2, you'll be able to specialize a mage build, for example, into 2 completely different directions, having both fire and cold, and be just as viable within the same build, and allow you to really specialize your character. This wasn't really all that possible in Path of Exile 1, because if you'd spec'd into cold damage, you were heavily incentivized to keep using cold skills. Now, you'll be able to tweak the settings on your skills to take advantage of a particular skill tree setup for a fire skill, and then have a different passive skill tree setup for your cold skills. For melee fighters, you can have a tree set up for your axe skills, and another for mace. And again, like weapon swapping, have the game automatically swap between the trees on the fly as you use your skills. I really adore this change. This will definitely benefit players who like to experiment and allow you to work around different monster defenses, and means you don't need to pigeonhole yourself into purely using one elemental or weapon type. I really love how grinding gear games have taken the time to make these quality of life tweaks to really breathe more life into an already insanely deep system. Alright, moving over to more gameplay related changes, bosses have been completely redesigned for Path of Exile 2 to make them much more versatile and engaging. No longer will you be standing idle in Merville's water tornadoes, praying you'll outdamage her. Bosses now have much more engaging abilities, show a great deal more telegraphing in their attacks, and have a greater sense of danger about them. Now, certain builds I'm sure will appear that can tank and spank, but for most players, you'll need to be mindful of bosses' movements, attack patterns, and actively dodge when they take a swing at you, instead of hoping to merely heal it all back. Bosses also now require you to kill them in a single attempt. If you die, they will reset, requiring you to start again like many other ARPGs on the market, and similar in style to the Souls and Elden Ring series. As an additional point to this, some bosses in the campaign will give you a permanent stat buff the first time your character defeats them, meaning you really should go looking for the optional bosses during the campaign to really min-max those character stats. There's so much more I could say about bosses. There will be about 100 on full release, and they all look to have some incredible visual design separating them. Grinding Gear Games did release a trailer specifically related to them, so check that out if you haven't seen it already. This next change, and our 6th on the list, is somewhat related to bosses, but is impactful against all enemies. Crowd control effects in Path of Exile 2 are getting a massive facelift. The ability to stun and freeze bosses has been changed from how it functions in Path of Exile 1, in which most bosses were simply made immune to prevent players trivializing them. For Path of Exile 2, you will be able to slowly stack freeze and other mechanics on all bosses, and they'll also have a stun meter under their nameplate, which will build up as they take damage. Once stunned, they'll fall into a downed idle animation, giving you a shot at free damage. And similarly, you'll be able to freeze bosses, and impact them with other status effects which will need to be built up over time. This doesn't mean you can cheese them by repeatedly freezing, as they will gain some temporary resistance to being frozen over and over, but it will allow you to be more dynamic in your fights with enemies, and gives players another tool to help them cut down the masses. This also extends to your mapping and campaign runs, helping you CC challenging mobs. On to our last 4, and honestly, this might be the one I'm most keen on, which is why I put it in the list. Minions have been completely overhauled for Path of Exile 2. There is such an insane variety in this system, I won't be able to cover it all, but what you need to know is that minions now reserve a new resource called Spirit, if they're permanent, or may consume corpses if they're temporary. Spirit is a new resource to Path of Exile 2. Each character begins with 100 of it, and this will be increased through the campaign, through passives, and itemization. More Spirit means you can summon more minions, and with a variety of minions you can now better pick and choose your army, allowing you to have a skeleton frontline with archers to back them up, rather than picking one or the other. Spirit is a resource that is also taking over as the resource that is used for reservations, so having auras and minions together is going to come down to a matter of selection. Do you want more skeletons? Or do you want to buff what you have as well as yourself and others? I've already touched on the Pokemon style Spectre system in other videos, but what's most important to me is that the Necromancer fantasy has never, and I mean it, never been done better in any other ARPG. If you think you know one better, throw it in the comments because I need to know about it. Moving on to the 8th change, the ability to active block in PoE 2 is coming for shield users. Shields will come with the attached skill Raise Shield, which will allow you, as you might expect, to raise your shield. This will block all damage coming from the front, but doesn't block attacks from the sides and back. Active block is quite an interesting mechanic in PoE 2. It doesn't replace your block chance, which is a passive stat you'll receive from items and passive skills, which allow your character to block hits based on a percentage chance. But it does mean, if you have a bunch of monsters coming in for a hit, you can simply raise your shield and negate the damage. This isn't something we've seen in Path of Exile before, and really opens the door for new playstyles that are likely going to be slower and more methodical. I can see PoE veterans ignoring this ability to prevent slowing themselves down, but if you're finding yourself low on health, this could be a lifesaver, especially with us seeing that PoE 2 looks to be slowing down the speed of the game. I like this change because it isn't mandatory to keep yourself alive, but for those melee fighters who are up close and personal, they'll be able to save their life flasks simply by bringing the shield up to save their life. And this looks to really improve the challenge melee classes face early in the campaign. Our second last change is the introduction of the WASD movement option. You can still click to move in Path of Exile 2, but WASD is now a secondary option, and one that I think will take over as the primary movement type. This single-handedly caused the delay of Path of Exile 2, and was something the team didn't expect to be any good, but has since convinced them of its value. This movement type has some insane benefits for ranged characters. Now that we've seen that you can move while shooting bows and crossbows, or while casting some skills. What I'm most excited for with the introduction of WASD is how much simpler it is going to be to dodge boss abilities in some scenarios. I think about the Searing Exarch boss fight in Path of Exile 1, and the rolling fireballs. The amount of time I've hit one of those damn balls because I slightly misclicked, not a major issue of course, and I need to work on getting good, but it's a great quality of life option to give players who want to try it out. As I said, I think this will be the dominant option players pick simply because it will give them better mobility while using skills, but at the same time, needing to use 4 fingers to move when they could be hitting skills could turn people off. Let me know what you think on that one. Do you reckon you'll make that shift? I think I'll be convinced when I get my hands on it. And finally, this might seem a little on the nose, but having 12 classes, and each of these classes having 3 unique ascendancy options is one of the biggest selling points for Path of Exile 2. Having come from a recently unnamed ARPG's expansion, I couldn't get over the fact I only had 5 class options, and that their skills were so limited that by the time I was 3 hours in, I'd felt I'd experienced all a character really had to offer. Having 12 options, and then being able to specialize each one 3 times, is going to add just an incredibly large amount of replayability to Path of Exile 2. I look at the melee fighters with their active block, a slow methodical approach to combat, the witch with an army of minions, sitting back as they chew through the crowd, the mercenary with an assault rifle style crossbow, and the druid literally turning into a bear. We have so many incredibly varied styles of play in this ARPG, and this is just from the small snippets of gameplay we've seen, and includes 4 classes that we haven't seen at all. Grinding Gear Games have really gone out of their way to ensure they can capture as many power fantasies as they can, and I just know that in the first week, I'll be starting a new character constantly to try new things and experience all the different combat styles available. Path of Exile 2 is literally 3 weeks away. How insane is that? To say I'm excited is an understatement. But remember to tell me in the comments below, what are the changes coming to Path of Exile 2 that you're most looking forward to? Did I capture it in this video, or have I committed some heresy and neglected your favorite mechanic? Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, throw a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, sub to the channel for more, but you being here is all that really matters. Have a great one. Come hang out in my streams Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube and Twitch, and I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.